This is one of the arch kettles that Elder William wrote about, with the lid that's affixed to the back of the kettle and the steam vent carrying the steam from the kettle off to the chimney. Now, when the building was built, I don't think they had piped water directly to the kettles yet, but at some point later on they did. And we'll fill the kettle by just opening the tap. Now we have this one set up for steaming, because we're going to be doing steamed bread pudding and steamed brown bread in this kettle. Now the fire is directly underneath the kettle, and it's time to light this, because it'll take a long time for all the water in the kettle to get up to temperature for steaming. Now the way I build the fires is the same under all of the kettles, and I'll show that when we light the fire for the bake oven. This is one of the 2 bake ovens that William Deming talks about, built on the new improved plan that'll bake 4 settings at 1 heating. Before I start the fire, I've got to open the flue. This is the damper for the flue, and the flue goes back to the chimney from the front of the oven. And I have to take the lid off of the little trap door, through which our coals later on will be raked once the oven's up to temperature. Now, the way I build a fire is perhaps my own way of building a fire. But the way the bake oven is heated is by building a fairly small hot fire, right in the baking chamber. And then as we feed it, we move it around inside the baking chamber to heat all the bricks. This is a huge oven compared to most household ovens in the early 19th century, because of course most households didn't have 85 to 100 people living in them. This is at least 6 feet deep, and probably about something like 5 or 6 feet wide at the widest point. So it takes about 3 hours to get the fire to all the different places inside the oven. Now I start with shavings and kindling. And I build up a nice little tower. And then I get some bigger kindling. This is the size that we'll be using for heating the oven. Kind of large kindling. And let's find a place to... Now I'll let it burn right here for a while until it's ready, until I need to feed it again. And then just before I feed it, I'll move it a little bit off to the side, over closer to the oven wall, and then feed it again. People always ask, how do you know when it's hot enough? When you've been working with the same oven for a while, as the Shakers would have been, you just get to know what the fire looks like and how it burns when it's up to temperature. We've stopped using any sorts of mechanical methods of testing oven temperature. Instead, the signs that I watch for is when the fire's at the back of the oven, the smoke, as it curls forward toward the flue along the top of the oven, actually sort of reburns. So there'll be flames licking the whole top of the oven. So that's when I know when it's getting up to temperature, that the smoke actually reignites. There now, that's better. While this is heating, we'll go over to the Rumford and get that started heating. The drill is the same for lighting the Rumford. Now, the way the Rumford works is, rather than having the fire in the baking chamber, there's a little firebox underneath. We call it a Rumford roaster because Benjamin Thompson, Count Rumford, who designed institutional cooking equipment for orphanages and academies and things in Europe, designed a whole lot of different sorts of cooking equipment that looks very much like what we have here. And his designs were well known in the builder's manuals of the day. So it's likely that the Shakers were using one of his designs, though it's not exactly the same as he designed. In his original design, rather than the fire heating the bottom of the oven and the smoke going around the outside of the oven to heat the whole shell the way we have it, his was more of a convection oven. There were two tubes above the firebox, air tubes, that the fire would then heat the air, and then the air circulated into the oven, and there was an exhaust kind of tube at the top of the oven for the hot air to then pass off to the chimney, so that it was very much like a convection oven. This is more like a standard modern gas oven, except that it's not gas-fired, it's wood-fired. There's the firebox is underneath. There's a baffle between the firebox and the oven so that it doesn't just heat the bottom of the oven. Instead, the flue from the firebox is a channel in the brickwork that goes all the way around outside the oven and then off to the chimney on this side and carries it off. We don't even know quite where it goes. But so that way the hot smoke circulates around the entire oven and heats the whole shell. And it's a double-walled shell, so there's a layer of air even between that hot smoke, so that would then equalize the temperature. And it works quite well, though we've found, and I don't know whether it has to do with the age of it or whether it always had this fault, that in the back it tends to get hotter than in the front. So things in the back of the oven tend to cook faster than the things in the front. So we just rotate our cookies, whatever.